Well, Hayes and I are out here on the Wooden Nickel Trail this morning, and we're thinking about pipelines. And I wonder, Canada, can we have a chat about pipelines? Just a open and honest discussion as Canadians. And by that I mean not from a Quebec point of view or an Alberta point of view, not how it looks in Saskatchewan or British Columbia or New Brunswick. Can we just have a frank talk about pipelines and their relationship to Canadian prosperity as Canadians, as a nation? You know, assuming that we have similar goals and aspirations for our children and our grandchildren, and you know, most of those kind of things in one way or another relate to prosperity, as does the management of our unarguably most valuable resource. And just before we start, I'd just like to slip on another one of my hats and point out that as of this tax season, there are 8 provinces in Canada whose marginal tax rate is above 50%. And you know, not everybody will yet be at the point in life where they're experiencing marginal tax rates, so I do want to just add an addendum there that paying tax at the marginal does not mean that you're Warren Buffett. It just means that you got your red seal or your degree or your promotion, whatever. Anyway, let's start with the Keystone. You know what the most notable thing about the Keystone pipeline is? I think past tense might be accurate now. The most notable thing about the Keystone is it was our last hope that we were clinging to turn extraordinarily high value resources into the means of Canadian prosperity. Our last hope was residing in the power of a foreign government. So I'm not saying that I feel any less cheated by the Biden administration decision than any other Canadian, particularly Canadians that spent their life in the resource sector. But I am questioning, you know, what ground we might have to stand on to, you know, even get a little bit snooty about what the Biden administration's done. So let's review, shall we? The point is to move these high dollar resources into the marketplace from their current, basically landlocked positions. Is there value to the nation in doing this? You know what? They've built probably the highest standard of living in the entire planet out of a sandbar in the Middle East. Yeah, the value of moving these resources is well known. So the Energy East project, which aside from moving resources, would have backed foreign supertankers out of the Gulf of St. Lawrence by supplying Quebec refineries and New Brunswick refineries. And I'm not really understanding how come that isn't a priority, because the last of the very nearly extinct right whales live in the Gulf of St. Lawrence at times, and supertankers mowing through them doesn't seem to get a whole lot of... They must be less valuable whales than the considerably less threatened orcas on the west coast, I guess, is my only guess. But in any event, the Energy East pipeline ends at the Quebec border for purely reasons of politics. And by that I mean Quebec society hasn't reduced their reliance on oil at all. So there isn't any higher, what I'm getting at is there isn't any higher achievement has been done here. And in general, we can even say that in terms of anybody that's rubbing their hands together with glee because of the Biden administration decision on the Keystone Pipeline, you can just stop. You literally have not prevented one single barrel of hydrocarbon coming into the marketplace. You've only controlled where it comes from. And a big part of that control is choosing to bias to very troubled nations, which are most likely taking all kinds of environmental shortcuts to save their economic and political positions. So that's all on Canada. And we did that. And we did that way before Washington shut down the Keystone. And then we had the Northern Gateway pipeline. You know, many of us thought that was pretty much a done deal. Everything about that one made sense. Hundreds of indigenous nations being lifted out of poverty, many being lifted all the way into prosperity. It's never been really clear why Ottawa chose to shut that pipeline down. But one have to ask, you know, with this never-ending, you know, entrenched federal racism that keeps getting pointed out, if the real reason Northern Gateway ended up shut down is because somebody discovered that some 100 indigenous nations were going to benefit from it. Keystone, or Trans Mountain, this is a really stupid one. Trans Mountain isn't even a new pipeline. Trans Mountain's just a pipeline expansion. And we can't even pull that off. You know, we recognize as Canadians that all voices can be heard. But the voice that seems to be in charge of Canada right now seems to only come from this far, far left, radical, gratitude, extinction delinquent movement, and from internal, regional, I'm just going to say jealousies. And that's really what I wanted to get to today. The embarrassment for Canada that we're going international with our complaints about our people won't let us get our valuable product to market, when all the international world already knows that we shut down 3 of our own projects that didn't rely on any sort of international collaboration. We need to get our house in order, Canada. We need to decide whether we wish to be a nation of prosperity or a nation that lives in huts in the woods. The thinking people need to reason their way through, you know, some of the fear-mongering that's been foisted off on them, because you shouldn't need me or anybody else that's educated in the petrochemical and energy markets to explain some of this nonsense that's been foisted off on you by foreign high school dropouts and other entities whose primary interest seems to be in finding anything other to do than contribute to society in a meaningful way. So anyway, Canada, I just thought I'd take the time to bring us a little bit home to self-honesty on this. Our landlocked resource problem, that we can't blame that on Washington. We need to blame that on you and me, on each other. That's why I wanted to have this talk as Canadians. I don't want to be finger pointing. I mean, as a nation, if we make these decisions as a nation, as one people, one set of grandchildren, one set of children, one set of great-grandchildren. If we think of it that way, we will always support our mutual prosperity. You know, let's be better than what we're seeing from the rest of the world, Canada. Let's start being Canadians first and put some of our regional differences aside. We don't need to do this to ourselves. We don't need to do this to our children. We don't need to do this to our grandchildren. Just saying. Thanks for listening. Have a nice day.